To Sir with Love, Sir Paul McCartney, still rocking at 55. I'm Jane Pauley, and this is Time and Again.
The following program is brought to you in living color. Ladies and gentlemen, a good evening to you.
This is Lowell Thomas in New York. The Beatles emerged off the earth.
Go, my fellow Americans!
I'm Chet Huntley, your host on...
We had 73 television cameras on Mayday Barrel.
President Nixon is actively...
One small step for man.
Good evening. Back when he was 24 years old, Paul McCartney asked the musical question, "Will you still need me when I'm 64?" He doesn't have too much longer to wait for the answer. June 18th is McCartney's 55th birthday. This month also marks the 30th anniversary of the landmark Beatles album, Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band. McCartney hasn't slowed down much since then. He's just released his latest solo album. Tonight on Time and Again, a visit with Paul McCartney by way of the NBC News archives. And by the way, that's Sir Paul to you. Earlier this year, McCartney was knighted by the Queen.
Wonderful, glorious day for us all. Proud to be British, wonderful day, and it's a long way from a little terrace in Liverpool.
A long way from Liverpool, indeed. It's been more than 3 decades since McCartney and his fellow Beatles took the world by storm. The band is long gone, of course, but the memories remain. Nowhere stronger than with Sir Paul himself. Back in 1993, McCartney sat down with Tom Brokaw for a chat on the set of Saturday Night Live, where Paul was making an appearance. The interview has never been seen in its entirety until now.
Do you remember when you began as a Beatle 30 years ago, what 50 seemed like to you at that time?
50 seemed very, very ancient. I knew a guy who was 24 when we were about 18, and it looked like the end of the road. 24, we thought, that is a grown man, and it would not be seemly to be playing rock and roll at that age. However, I find myself at this venerable age playing it.
And has it changed the way you hear music or the way you approach music at all, being 50 as opposed to being 18 or 20?
I think the major difference is that I would concern myself more with issues rather than just love songs, because I'm a father of 4 now, so that's changed my perspective. But the way I hear it, there's a sort of a voice inside me or an ear inside me or whatever, still hears it the same as I ever did.
And does that ever go away for you? Do you hear it all the time?
Hopefully not, you know. I still love it. I have a sort of innocent attraction to music. I still think it's magic.
When you look out into an audience and see young women who are younger than your daughters going slightly bananas, that's the life that you've had. I mean, you don't have the same attitude about that now as you did.
Don't I?
Oh, you do?
You know?
Well, tell me.
Should I? My wife might be watching. You know, look, I blame the hormones.
Theirs or yours?
Mine. No. It's great fun seeing an audience reacting, and I put those thoughts out of my mind, Tom.
And what do your daughters say about all that? Do they just shake their head and say, it's only you, my old man? Come on,
Yeah,
what can they be so excited about?
Well, they're good, you know. I always expected a big generation gap. Because me and my dad liked to play jazz, and he liked things like Chicago. You know, so I expected my kids not to like my stuff and to have kind of really moved on, which they've done, but they do still like our stuff. They still like the Beatles stuff. They like what I do. But they keep my feet on the ground, you know. They occasionally, when I'm getting a bit too big-headed, they just knock me down.
Do you have to be protective that you don't get so involved with an issue that you're only identified with that and not with your music? Are you protective of your role as a public artist?
I used to be a lot more protective than I am now. I used to think that entertainers shouldn't get into issues. I was younger then. I think now sometimes if governments don't get it right, if they go down to the Earth Summit and say, we're not going to sign, you know, apparently do nothing, when everyone's worried about this big hole in the ozone layer, then it sometimes falls to other people in the public eye to express their views, you know. And in my case, that's what I do.
It's well known as well that you have an enormous amount of wealth, and do you think about how you can use that as well for these causes?
Yeah, I do. You know, as you say, there are a lot of causes that call on it, but you just select a few. I have my local hospital where I live is one sort of charity I've been supporting. And then there's a big plan in 1995 to reopen my old school in Liverpool as a performing arts centre. So, you know, these particular things are what I give my attention to and my money.
Are you concerned?
And, you know, more than that too, but those are the particular pet interests.
And what about raising your daughters? What about raising children with money? You grew up without it.
Yeah. Linda and I made a big decision when we first got married, because she's from quite a wealthy family. And we made a decision to go through the state system, not to send them to special schools. It's different here from how it is in England. There's a pretty good state system there. We decided that if they were going to be wealthy when they grew up, that the main thing they needed was to get their feet on the ground early, so that they could see a postman and a milkman or whatever and be able to talk to him like he's a human being instead of learning to look down on him. So we're very careful about that, and it's probably one of the things we're most proud of now, that our kids, touch wood, are very level-headed people, and now they can kind of now ease into the money and not be snobs with it all. That's the theory, anyway.
And what about Paul McCartney? Is there any place in the world that you have ever gone where you were not known as the cute Beatle?
Oh, yeah, there's still quite a few places. I go down to Jamaica, and, you know, a few people know me, but, like, the people in the villages never heard of me, you know. I think if someone pointed out, this is one of the Beatles, then they'd click. But we were in a market, and I went behind a stall, and I was just playing with some puppies, and the lady said, you from America? I think, you know, the long hair, they figure you're American. I said, no, I'm from Britain. She said, oh, you are subjects too. That levels you right out. Subjects of Her Majesty.
We'll have more of Tom's interview with Paul McCartney when Time and Again continues. We continue now with Paul McCartney chatting with Tom Brokaw on the set of Saturday Night Live. The date was February 11th, 1993.
You've spent most of your life as Paul McCartney's solo artist, but the defining years obviously were as a Beatle, but you'll always be known as a Beatle. Does that trouble you at all?
No. It's something I'm very proud of, you know, and I think I grow more into the nostalgia for it. When I was younger, I just thought, well, we've done that, and now onward and upward, you know. But I can look back now with great fondness. You know, that's a nice thing about memories. You cut out all the bad bits. You just remember all the great bits. So I'm very happy to have been there. It doesn't bother me. We reached a point of no return when you sort of realize that, you know, Charlie Chaplin's always going to be the funny little guy with the funny walk, even though he's an old man living in Switzerland. And in my case, I just thought, well, you know, I'm always going to be known as the Beatles. Nothing wrong with that.
In New York City, of course, there's a kind of a special claim, I suppose, on John Lennon. And when you think about your relationship with him, do you think of only the good bits as well and try to remove the bad bits?
Yeah, you do. I think that's one of the great things about time and memory. You know, it's like the terrible holidays you had where it rained. You remember the one great day, you know. And John and I had our bad moments, but relatively in the time we spent together, which was quite a long time, we had a great time. And we loved each other, you know. I always say he wouldn't have put up with me if he didn't think I was any good, really. I mean, you know, I'm the only guy I ever wrote with him, and it was his choice to write with me, so he must have thought I was okay. But, you know, we had our business differences, and we decided to bitch at each other like any good marriage.
But do the memories of him resonate any more when you come to New York City, which is where his life finally ended?
Sure, yeah, I happened to be out jogging in the park this morning, you know, so I'm looking at the Dakota, I'm looking out for strawberry fields, I'm thinking of him as I run.
When the history of the 20th century is written, it will include the names of Churchill and Franklin Roosevelt and Stalin and Mao Zedong. And among the names it will also include will be Paul McCartney and the Beatles. Do you find that daunting?
Very, yeah. You know, for a kid who studied history in school, you get this perspective of history as to what it is. As you grow up, you realize that you could be some kind of part of it. It was really brought home to me when I was taking my daughter to the British Museum to introduce her to the sort of library experience when she was a student. And we walked past a showcase there, right next to James Joyce, and there's Lennon and McCartney, our manuscripts in the British Museum. Yes, it's pretty daunting, but great. I'm not knocking it.
Gave you a pause, and how did she react?
Well, we flipped. I mean, both of us. I didn't know it was there. No one had told me. You know, I'm just walking through the British Museum. I didn't know I was in it. It's great. I mean, we were both very proud. You know, she's seen her dad's manuscripts in a case there, you know, next to all these famous people. It was a great moment.
You've had this life of phenomenal fame and success and wealth, and yet you're always known for your accommodating fashion, your lovable ways. You've even said that yourself, you're the guy who gets the drinks for the people in the room. Who helps you maintain that demeanor, keeps your center?
My family, really, it would be now, which would be Linda and the kids, mainly. Linda's very good at, you know, leveling you out if you're getting a little bit above yourself. But the real thing I put it down to, if, in the long term, I think was when I was brought up in Liverpool. Looking back on it now and talking with other people about their experience of being brought up, I had a very happy childhood. Even though my mum died when I was 14, which kind of put an end to that, up to 14, I had a very loving family, a lot of relatives, sort of, I always imagine like an Italian family, you know. You've always been handed babies and you just knew how to do it. I've got some friends now that handed a baby, it's like it's a piece of glass, you know. But I know what to do about it. And I think that stood me in good stead, really, when the fame came along. I always realized it was a bit of fun.
Do you think that that age of innocence pre-Beatles can ever be reclaimed in the world?
No. You can't go back to the first summer you ever spent on holiday. You can't go back to that. You can't relive those moments, but you have to come to terms with that, you know. I think anyone growing up would be foolish to think that one day it's all going to happen again. But I think what you do is you substitute the blessings that you got now. I mean, I've got kids now. I didn't have any kids then. I was running around clubs trying to pick up girls, which was great fun. It was lovely, innocent. I remember it with great fondness. But I'd much rather be me now.
You know the worst thing about being 50?
What is it?
You're going to be 51 in June.
Well, you should know, Tom.
Thank you.
Cheers, man.
Paul McCartney, the family man, when Time and Again continues. Paul McCartney is many things: musician, performer, composer, businessman, former Beatle, now he's even a knight. But his proudest creation is his family and his remarkably durable marriage to an American, the former Linda Eastman, who lately has been battling breast cancer. Paul and Linda were married in 1969. In 1979, they were guests on NBC's Tomorrow Show. Tom Snyder asked Linda how they met.
I was in London on a photographic assignment down at a club. I went to see Georgie Fame and the Blue Flames, who's a British group. And Paul was down there. Were you not?
And I picked her up.
You picked me up just like that.
Simple as that, Tom.
Very romantic.
I love you coming down to speak, you know. Just, yeah, there we are. Never look back.
You know, a lot of guys who would have had your success and your fame and your following might wish that sort of thing to go on forever. Yet one day you said, I've had enough of that. I want to, forgive the term, settle down and have a family and be with somebody I like and somebody I love. And you didn't miss all that other thing, or you don't seem to miss it.
Not really, no. I mean, what can you do, Tom?
His hands are tied, Tom.
No, it's true, actually. You know, I think the thing in my case is I'd done so much of it. And I've been knocking around the world with the Beatles for a good 10 years there. And when the time came to get married, I'd sown my wild oats, or whatever you say, you know, so I'd had enough. And I was quite ready to just kind of settle down and see what happened. And through the years, we've had kids and stuff, and it's just an education seeing kids grow up.
Here in this country, whenever they interview the wives of professional athletes, popular football or baseball players, the question is often asked, look, there are women in the stands who think your husbands are terrifically attractive and very strong and very powerful, and they meet them for autographs or whatever, and how do you handle that? I'm certain that there are fans of Paul's that would very much like to have a cup of coffee with him or something.
And, a cup of coffee?
And do you and he talk about that, or joke about it, or talk about it and try and keep it in perspective?
Well, we used to a lot more, have a laugh about it or talk about it, but I think now we've been through it for so long that we just smile about it.
Don't do it no more, Tom. Don't do it no more.
Tune in next week, Tom.
I'll try one more time at this. How hard do you have to work at making your family life succeed, considering the high pressure and high publicity parts of your lives?
Yeah, we have to work at it a little bit because we have to talk to the kids about it because they want to know. I mean, I remember one of the kids coming up to me once and saying, "You're Paul McCartney," you know. And it was a bit funny, really, because having them say it, you know, was a bit weird. But we just sit them down, kind of talk to them about it and just ask them what they feel about it. And they're pretty normal, you know. We work at keeping them normal. We send them to an ordinary school over here instead of sending them to sort of high-paying fee schools and stuff. So we just work at keeping them normal, and that's one of the reasons we try and be with them a lot, because I think one of the things in showbiz is people, through no fault of their own, always feel they have to be away. If their agent says you're going to Las Vegas, then they might leave the kids in New York, you know. And we just don't happen to have ever done it like that. Even when we're going on holiday and stuff, we've never actually had a holiday away from the kids, because they're not a headache to us. We actually enjoy them, you know.
That was 1979. A few years later, NBC's Bryant Gumbel checked in on Paul McCartney, family man.
Have you surprised yourself a little bit? I mean, in terms of your devotion to family?
Yeah,
I mean,
I think, you know, when I was younger, definitely could have never imagined it, you know. Would have really thought I was just, I don't know, just be a bachelor and a musician or something. It creeps up on you, though, doesn't it? You know, you get to an age, though, you suddenly realize you like all that stuff. You can't talk about having babies. You've got to have babies. There's a big difference, you know. Talking about them, imagining it and theorizing is one thing, but actually having them crawling all over you and they're yours, you know, makes a big difference.
has it been at all difficult to find a balance between being a good family man and a good music man?
I don't really think it has, actually. I think, you know, things have got to work out right. You know, you got to be lucky, find the right woman and stuff, you know.
McCartney returned to the family theme a few years later in this 1986 interview with NBC's Rona Elliott.
What about being married for 17 years?
What about it?
It's pretty incredible.
Yeah.
For anybody.
Guinness Book of Records time. It's, yeah, we're surprised constantly, you know, because, I mean, they did always say that when you kind of get past 40, like, the years seem to flick by, and they really do. God, it's terrifying. So, but you know, 17 years, yes, she's a great woman, very strong woman, very misunderstood, because when she does interviews, she tends to tense up, because she's not really a sort of professional person that way. She's not used to being in the public eye. She's used to being behind the camera, which is a lot easier than actually sitting there and explaining, trying to justify living. I'm okay, honest, you know. So whenever she gets in front of a camera, she does tend to be very serious and talk about issues that concern her deeply, which a lot of people like, but some people, I think, take it as a hardness and a sort of coldness, that she, which is the very opposite of how she is, actually. She's a great cook, great mother. She's a good girl.
How do you see yourself primarily, or in what order? You're family man, musician, songwriter. Where in that do you find yourself?
It sounded good. Yes, you know, I think in my early days I would have naturally put art first. But when you get kids, when you get married and when you get kids, some people still keep the art first. But then where does that leave the kids, you know? And they're kind of living, breathing, real people, you know, and they need attention. So I always put them before music, really, much as I love music. If it's a choice, there's no contest.
What if they come home and say, Dad, we want to be rockers, we want to be punkers, put razor blades in our nose?
They've done it already. My 23-year-old went through a phase of punk, which you've got to allow, you know. You can't say, hey, no, you know, you can't grow your hair long and stuff, because that's what we went through. So I always knew when that came up, I'd have to, like, allow it. Doesn't mean you're going to like it or not worry about it, because, I mean, what happens is it makes you understand what your own parents went through when you have kids. Because, you know, I could never understand why my dad didn't want me to wear tight trousers and have long hair. I thought, there's nothing wrong with it, you know, what's up? But I think I understand now. He thought I was hanging out with the wrong crowd. And I was. No, some of the time I was. But it was really harmless. It was a fashion. It was just a look, you know. And when Heather got into it, at first, we were a little bit worried about what it might lead to, I don't know, traditional parents, whereas you can't help it. You think you're going to be madly liberal, but then it happens and you go, "Ooh."
Paul McCartney in 1986. We'll get back 20 years to 1966, to Paul with his fellow Beatles, when Time and Again continues. With the album Revolver just out, and Yellow Submarine and Eleanor Rigby on the singles charts, the Beatles met the press in New York on August 22nd, 1966. They were then in their mid-20s.
2 years ago, I traveled with you as a group, and this time around you seem to be much more quiet, much more restrained. Do you think you're getting older, or is the press getting to you?
I think we're probably cut and send it back.
Each year.
Another question.
Right here, we have a question.
I've got older.
There appear to be a much smaller number of fans outside the hotel, and the concert tomorrow night at Shea Stadium is far below a sellout. How do you feel about
Very rich.
not being quite as popular as you were?
It doesn't matter.
Make the same money?
Well, I don't know. The thing is, do you expect us just to go on forever, making more and more money, making more and more figures bigger and bigger? You can't just go on forever.
If certain people have decided they don't like the statement, then we don't
We'd want to get rid of them.
We'd want to like us and really like us rather than pretend to like us because we're the in thing.
Do you want cokes?
Sorry?
Do any of you have plans to record on your own?
English voice.
We do at home.
We might.
In fact, we have done, I think. Well, Eleanor Rigby was Paul on his own, and
we were just drinking tea.
No, but what I'm trying to get at is, do you have any plans like for anything definite at all?
Not for separate recording careers, if that's what you mean.
No one knew it at the time, but the Beatles' last ever live concert was then just a week away. By 1970, the Beatles had moved on to 4 separate recording careers. The most successful by far, Sir Paul McCartney. That's Time and Again for now. Thanks for joining us. I'm Jane Pauley, and we're history.
How long would you like to keep on doing this?
This, forever.
Really?
I think so, yeah. I haven't found anything better yet. Sort of, for me, I really feel as though I'm a writer, really. And I feel, you'd be 98, be 100, and still say, yes, today, tomorrow.